And welcome to Thursday morning coffee rants with Dan. I am the spiritual anarchist, Dan, your host. Today is Thursday, February 20th, in the year of all of us, 2025. And here we have another week on this Soul Garden prison planet. So I don't have anything specific planned to talk about today, so I'm going to be really, not that I ever really do plan anything out, but I'll be talking by the seat of my pants today. But I do have a lot of questions that have popped up into my head, because I tend to like to zoom out to try to get a bigger picture for what's really happening and not stay stuck in the minutia of politics. For instance, politics is for lunatics, and all ticks are parasites. So I want to thank my special producer here, Knuckles, and give a shout out to everybody on Truth Mountain. I know you guys are having a little bit of a tough time. I listened to your show yesterday. You guys are making the best of it. You're doing what you need to do, and I'm glad that you're in a place right now where you're doing a little bit better temporarily. I get it. So, I didn't feel like doing the show today. Last week, there was an electric outage. Almost 2 million people had their electricity out in the area where the server for Revolution.radio is at. And speaking of which, if you have any extra money to give, please donate to Revolution.radio. It's the largest listener-supported platform, radio platform in the world. The donation tabs gives you all the different ways that you can donate. You can go to Patreon and help keep the station on the air. So you get a little bit of, I do see a lot of what I would call political orientated radio shows on this platform, but you're still getting more of an honest view than you're going to get from the mainstream news media. But I don't think politics is going to ever solve humanity's problems. I think it's a smokescreen to keep the regular people of this planet at each other's throats. And I'm not some perfect person. I'm never going to be a perfect person. I have plenty of character defects, and I get better and better and still have character defects. But when I look at those who would hurt and murder others for selfish and sadistic reasons, when I look at those who would steal, enslave, and mass murder others, which is every government throughout the entire human history of all time, I have to really look at myself and say, I am a paragon of morality. And for people who know me, they would be laughing at that, but I really am. I objectively do not bring harm to others. Nor I stand by and watch the harm of others without saying something. And that's something that I want to say is free speech is still under attack. I left Facebook about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. I deactivated my Facebook account, and I'll be going back. I didn't do it for any, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. I didn't do it like I was mad, so I'm taking my ball and leaving and blah, blah, blah. I didn't make it no big thing. I'm, whatever. I got off of Facebook, hopefully, to maybe reset the algorithms a little bit. So when I pop back on, I'll make a few normal posts, see if that starts getting around to everybody. And then I can start making my common sense posts that are real truth posts that neither the left nor the right want circulating. So we have a new president in, and a new administration in. I'll talk about the lunatics in politics just a little bit today. I mean, you have to a little bit. I'm not going to get into the minutia. He said, she said, this, that, and the other, because it's all bullshit. Plain and simple, it's all bullshit. It's all smoke and mirrors to keep you fighting amongst yourselves. Because if humanity united and chose to live according to natural law, understood that our rights are actions, are verbs, that are, any action we take that doesn't initiate harm is our right to do. If humanity started to understand this and everyone stood up and said no, and all the order followers stood down and said no, let the old guys who start the wars, let them fight the wars. That's like a saying. We'll just go ahead and parrot that saying that we've heard our grandparents say and their grandparents say all throughout history: old men start wars and young men fight them. F that. Let the old men start them and let the old men go fight them. See, I've said throughout past radio shows that this isn't human driven. This isn't human driven, and this isn't biblical prophecy. I've said humans are too lazy to do this. I have to correct myself a little bit. Humans aren't that lazy. From what I'm seeing, when the human that wants to start the war isn't the one that has to go fight it, they don't mind starting it as much. So when it isn't directly affecting them personally or their family personally, they really don't mind. And as far as biblical things go, I'll get back to that. But getting back to the lunatics in politics, we have a new administration in office, and really all that's taken place, let's just say, with social media and the war on free speech, which is a worldwide war. Germany, in the eyes of, in the mindset, under the disguise of safety, public safety, and whenever I hear public safety, I hear public slavery. As soon as I hear public safety, I hear public slavery. As soon as I hear public servants, I hear public serpents. They like to play with the words and disguise what they really are. I'm not in a necessarily cheerful mood this morning. Very aggravated with things. I'm not going to, this is a coffee rant, so I'm allowed to get on here and rant. But I'm also trying to sway the minds and hearts of people. And as I zoom out and look at everything going on in the world, if we stay caught up in this two-party dialectic in this country will be divided. And they can't do what they want to do with a united America, which is why they're working expertly at dividing us. And Germany, if you get on social media and talk against one of their politicians, one of their puppeticians, and you say something, and they've got like thousands of cases like per quarter that they're working through. They've got a huge case, so they've got like 8 different special divisions dedicated to watching what people say on the internet. And if you say something like what I would say on Facebook, it gets them arrested and charged for spreading hate. So they're not allowed to have free speech over there. Like worse than here. And this is Germany. It's sounding a lot like Nazism to me, to be honest with you. It's sounding like it's gone full circle back to Nazism. You're just not allowed to use that ancient symbol. If you look up what symbols are, there's a book called Symbols. That's an ancient symbol that was used for a long time, the Nazi symbol. It got bastardized by the Nazis because Hitler was into the research of the occult to use for dark reasons, and this world is ran by a priest class of dark occultists. Again, if you want to know more about that, go to What on Earth is Happening, listen to what Mark Passio says about it, look up some of the things that, a lot of things that Michael Tsarian talks about, Jordan Maxwell, God rest his soul. No one's perfect. I don't agree with everything every single person says, but these are giants to me who've done a lot of research. Look at what David Icke is still doing. Listen to these people. They've been trying to warn humanity for a long time, and it gets disheartening. And I'm like, I didn't even feel like doing a radio show today, but I bet you those Marines in Iwo Jima, when they were fighting in the last moral war that this country ever fought in, if there is a such thing as that, they probably felt like not really going in that day to work. So I figured, how could I not stand behind or sit behind a mic and run my mouth for an hour? But free speech is, when I zoom out, all the left and right do, as far as anything is concerned, really. But what I seen immediately on free speech was they changed the words of what they called fact checks, just like Mark Zuckerberg changed the way he looked. Instead of looking like a short-haired lizard, reptilian, he's now smiley with a little bit of brown curly hair. What a soft guy. And that was like almost overnight. That was amazing. And he was forced to do all this stuff by the left and blah blah blah. Yet there's still fact checks on Facebook, and I'm still buried in the news feed at the bottom of people's feeds. People have to actually come to my page if they want to see what's going on. And in the meantime, people are getting just millions and millions of ads instead of their friends. Originally the platform was to see what your friends were doing. I was actually thankful for it. To a degree, I still am. There's certain friends I would have never been able to stay in contact with. But I now know it's just an information intelligence gathering mechanism, and it's done a really good job at that. But they just rename it. They use a different word, and it's the same thing. It's still suppression of freedom of speech. YouTube's the same way. Now they'll put Wikipedia articles underneath something if you talk about anything to do with the psyop of, the weather getting global warming and whatever. You talk about global warming, you talk about cloud seeding, you talk about chemtrails, you talk about anything on YouTube, they will attach a Wikipedia article to it, and they'll call it something else, but they're essentially doing the same thing. And they even took down one of my videos still. So I still have to talk in code on YouTube, and I still have to talk in code on Facebook or whatever. So I'm hoping to reset the Facebook algorithms. I got the hell off of Facebook for a minute. Hold on a second. I'm sipping my coffee. So zooming out, if they can keep us vibrating in a state of fear, a state of shame, in a state of constant contradiction, which is what all the political arguments do. They get, let's just say, for instance, the Middle East problem. It's a lot simpler to me when I zoom out and really take a look at it, because I've actually studied history, than getting caught up in my emotions and my feels. And I zoom out and take a look at it. One of the things that they do is they'll get goofballs, yes, goofballs, woke far left goofballs who dress like clowns and pretend they're women, which is basically making fun of women. And they'll be waving these flags around saying that they support Palestine. And then the right automatically will be against Palestine because, well, look who's supporting them. We're not for that. We're for Jesus. I don't know if you guys know this, but the three major world Abrahamic religions, and they're different versions of God, which is the same, bearded guy in the desert sky. Two of those religions, Islam and Christianity, have already had multiple prophets that have come and told the truth to humanity about the nature of humanity. Judaism, that prophet hasn't arrived yet, according to them. I don't really get into religion real far. All I'll say is this: to the far right, they don't really have a lot of respect for Jesus, just so you know. So they have you supporting within contradiction. Then they like to play with words. If you speak out against what you see as a genocide and kids being murdered and all the other things that they've done, you're somehow anti-Semitic. And how am I anti-Semitic when the only Semites over there right now currently are the Palestinian people? They're of original Semitic bloodlines. They're of original Semitic languages, which is what Semitic is. That spoke Hebrew or an offshoot of Hebrew, Arabic, or Aramaic. A lot of the ancestors of the people currently in Israel are from Europe, are from Western Europe. So I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm anti-murder is basically what I am. And there's questions that I have. These are common sense questions. Instead of automatically rooting for your team, I'm not taking away, I'm not saying that innocent people weren't murdered on October 7th back in 2023. I don't know. I'm pretty sure there probably were. I know false flags do in fact exist. You can look up false flag. They'll probably attach the word conspiracy theory to it. So, but look for the definition of what a false flag is. So I'm pretty sure, and God rest the souls of the people of Israel who were murdered that day. But I've seen video of how life is over there, and it really is like an open air prison. About every 100 yards, there's a armed checkpoint you have to go through. And I'm not going to just parrot what they say on the media. Well, the Iron Dome can keep anyone out, blah, blah, blah. None of these people kind of came in on their gliders. And maybe the Iron Dome doesn't pick up something that small. I don't know. I'm asking a question. Can it? Or is it more about just missile defense with the Iron Dome and stuff like that? That would make sense to me. So these guys kind of ninjaed their way in there like Navy SEALs, right? They had the resources to have little parachutes with fans on them and kind of glide in, land, and kill 3,000 people, according to what we've been told. God, I really feel bad if that's true. I hope it's not true. But if it is true, I feel terrible about that. That's murder. And Israel does have a right to defend themselves in that case. I'm not taking that away. What I'm saying is where were all the IDF every 100 yards? They got armed IDF and Israeli police about every 100-yard checkpoint. They didn't see in the bright blue sky these gliders coming in. How come it took them so long to respond? These are the types of questions that you should ask. It doesn't make sense to me. But what we've seen is a systematic destruction of an entire area of land. And I get a little bit scared. See, I served in the United States Marine Corps during the first Gulf War. And in my mind, I joined in the Marine Corps because I seen this big bully country named Iraq was invading this little small country named Kuwait, and it didn't have a right to do so. And I'm like, this is what Germany did back in World War II. All right, I'm going in for a righteous reason. I'm older and smarter now. I know that there was resources and natural resources and oil and other things at stake for us to be getting involved in that. But some of the stuff that I'm seeing now, and again, how much of this is actually just to create fear, create division, create all the loose energy that these beings that we can't see feed off of, that I've been guilty of feeding in my own. It takes conscious effort not to feed these beings. They feed off that loose energy. I really truly believe this. You can call this a theory. It's not an actual conspiracy. I have no evidence or proof of it, but there's something that feeds off of negative human energy. It's substance for them, kind of like in the allegory of the Matrix. So my bigger question is it okay if the most powerful country in the world, still the United States, decides we're going to make Canada ours and we're going to invade Mexico, stopping drug cartels and doing all that stuff because drugs that are not from pharmaceutical companies are considered illegal. if they were to be made legal in the private sector and adults can just openly exchange in things, there wouldn't be none of the violence that goes on with drug cartels, in my opinion. But I understand you don't want these types of deadly drugs on the street. I get it. Trust me, I get it. But talking about invading other countries and talking about making Greenland ours and buying Gaza and doing these different things, I don't know how true it is. It's a lot of I would say disinformation, probably just to put us in that state of anxiety and fear, or to get people on the left, angry. The left did all kinds of stuff on purpose that made the right angry. It was exaggerated stuff on purpose because they want to create that division, and we shouldn't let them divide us like that. But it makes me a little worried. Are we turning into the bully? Because if America turns into a bully and starts just invading all these countries, if Canada wants to be annexed and become part of the United States, that's their decision. If they don't, that's also their decision. It's nice to extend that offer. If they say, no, we like being a sovereign country, then we have to respect that. We shouldn't have a footprint in the Middle East at all, as far as Gaza is concerned. And this is just my opinion. And this isn't like some violently driven opinion. It's just, if we become the bullies in the eyes of the world, which they're trying to do, well, what is the world going to do against the big bully on the block? Because they're going to unite against that big bully. That's something to think about. And this is from a tactical standpoint. My podcast used to be called Tac Chat. From a tactical standpoint, the left in the last 4 years greatly, and I was boots on the ground talking to recruiters, greatly weakened our military and turned a lot of it woke. And we're a little short-staffed. We've still got a very powerful military, very powerful technology, but can we afford right now at this point to be fighting in China, fighting in the Middle East, fighting over Taiwan, fighting in the Middle East, dealing with the stuff going on with the PSYOP war that was just to test out weapons and armor, in my opinion, with Russia and Ukraine, plus have a border fight at both crises, plus the poly crises that are happening within our country? It all seems like it's been a little planned out to me. Now think about this for a second. If you were a supernatural being, extraterrestrial being of some kind, don't you think it would be easy to get a primitive human to worship you as a god? I highly recommend reading Michael Tillinger's book, Slave Species of the Gods, because when I said that this isn't all human driven and that this is actually extraterrestrial driven to one degree or another, if you were a being that lived for millions of years, if not immortal, 2,000 years is a drop in the bucket. This isn't biblical prophecy happening. You could lay out what you're going to do and what's going to happen in 2,000 years. And let me get to something else too. I know a lot of legitimate psychics, and legitimate psychics can give you possible futures. They could see possible futures. And a lot of times they're really, really, my friend Psychic Sonia is right on with a lot of things. But even to them, sometimes it's hazy. They can't exactly tell you what or why or when, but they can see. So the stuff in the Bible is all about prophecy and seeing into the future. And we've had human beings who are gifted at that. Well, it only stands to reason that higher sentient extraterrestrials would be even more gifted at that. Okay? The contradictions in the Bible, although there's a lot of good allegory in the Bible, and there's a lot of good Christians out there who live according to, humbleness, humility, piety, charity, forgiveness. They live that good, what you expect a Christian to be, type of life, but there's still a lot of dysfunction in that Bible. When you talk about blood sacrifices, you talk about human sacrifices, You talk about slavery, and God's allowing that. No loving God would allow that. Also, you need to think about this. You can't have it both ways. You can't be told that this is what's going to happen in 2,000 years, or in the end days, this, and that will happen, and there's nothing that could be done to stop it. Because, well, what about free will? And somebody will say, well, you still do have free will, but this other stuff is the will of God. What kind of loving God would even create a world like this where, in order for you to live, something else has to die? Go to the plains of Africa and watch a lion devour a wildebeest or something. Watch a crocodile ambush an antelope trying to drink some water. This is a violent freaking planet, and human beings are just as violent as the animals. I would say we might have been made by a couple of different extraterrestrial beings, and we're at a constant battle with our lower animalistic nature and the higher spiritual, higher sentient nature that some extraterrestrials have with higher consciousness. I think that's the allegory of it personally. But if I was a being that lived for millions of years, I could easily set down a chain of events that are going to happen, and I know in about 2,000 years I'm going to start making those things happen. Then put a ruling class based off of your bloodline of these monkeys you put your DNA into, and have them be in charge of everything. See, I think God with a capital G is consciousness. The universe is fractal. Our brainwave looks like a bunch of electricity, looks like the universe if you take a look at things. I think God's connected to all things. Real God with a capital G. Real God and Goddess together with a capital G. Because the three major religions in this world being tied into the same location is perfect for divide and rule, divide and conquer, which is all religion is here to do. Okay, and again, there is good allegory in a lot of the things that you read in religious scripture that are changed over the years. But I just have lots of questions. Why did they have to have the Council of Nicaea? Why did they have to decide what books were going to be changed or added or kept out? Why were a bunch of scrolls found in northern Egypt in Namahagi? Oh my God, that's terrible. But all the Gnostic scrolls. And I've read them. And I'm going to read them again. These aren't things you read once and, hey, I got it. Sometimes they take study. But you read these things and you find out, wow, Mary Magdalene was a high priestess from Egypt. She was one of Jesus' main teachers. Oh, we can't have that. That's a woman doing that stuff. You can't have a woman in that high of a position. You need to read those. Maybe next show I'll have the website for you. There's a website you can go and you can download all the PDFs of those scrolls. And you can read the Gnostic texts, which to me are a little, they've got their own version of the devil, Yahweh Baal. Islam has its own version of the devil. They want to create this division and create this contradicting strife within us so they can do exactly what they're doing. And the bottom line is no human being has a right to rule over another being. I don't know why this is so hard of a concept for people to actually wrap their minds around. And the only reason why I'm bringing religion up is because it is being used as I seen on the news where an Israeli was basically yelling at one of them, an American Christian, hey, your own Bible says that this is our land. So the Bible to them is being used as a legal document to justify a genocide. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm pro-human life. Period. And everybody should be pro-human life. Quit rooting for your team. Okay. As far as politics go, there's a meme here. It says sometimes it's better to end something and try to start something new than to imprison yourself in hoping for the impossible. So quit putting all your hopes and responsibility to your fellow human being in the hands of lunatics, of people who are really, a lot of them are very narcissistic, to be honest with you. I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but you won't get when was the last time you heard a politician say, hey, you know what, I was really wrong about that, I'm sorry? They won't do it. That's the problem with half of humanity. It's the problem in my personal life. It's the problem in everyone's personal life. Everyone's got this person in their life who did them wrong, and then they get mad at you and want an apology for your reaction to their wrongdoing. And I'm talking one-on-one, person to person. I'm not going to go get mad at all this person's friends and go beat this person up, or try to beat him up, but then I'm going to beat up all his friends till I can get to him. You don't murder a whole race of people because you're trying to get to some bad actors who, to me, most of the Palestinian regular people consider them terrorists as well. This is how they keep you tracked in the contradictions, and this is how they are able to go ahead and do what they want to do and do the murder they want to do. Bigger question, I zoom out. Why? What's the purpose? What's the end goal? So voting is the act of deciding that someone other than yourself should run your life, whether facilitated by the state brainwashing or pure laziness, to wait patiently in line and demand that a third party run your life, boss you around, steal your money, is maybe the most inept ritual any human can engage in. To believe that this will produce personal benefits may be our most common form of clinical insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I've been guilty of this. I know what my bad patterns are, but it's not voting for the rulership of others. Let me be clear. So the main problem that I have with religion and politics is a religion. Religion is based off a dogmatic belief. Okay? There was this very well, I don't even know the dude's name. That's how unimportant it is to me. He's well known, and he debated. He was having a religious debate, and he was a Christian theologian, very well studied on scripture, very well studied on all this stuff, and he was talking about, the original scripture says, da 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 da, and I couldn't help but think to myself, well, I don't really care if that original scripture says whatever it says, it's still trash. Yes, you've got the original scripture that says that, so you've proven that point right, but it's trash. You've proven that trash is right. The trash that was written was right. Again, slavery, human sacrifice, animal sacrifice. I don't need to know nothing else about the supposed loving God that people talk about. You want this to be a loving God, but it's not. And they wouldn't have to say separation of state and religion. Separation of state and religion. It wouldn't even be a saying if it wasn't in fact a thing that exists. This is how they play with this is how they play with words and how they play with your head. It's religious cults. When you start to research, you go where the truth takes you. You research just to find out the truth. You go where it takes you. You don't research to validate an already held belief system, because you will validate your research then. Just like if you're being paid by somebody and funded by somebody to research, you're going to find the research that the funders want you to find. And you'll use $5 words and $10 words, and you'll make it sound great. And you'll be really good at winning debates. I mean, man, these people are so intelligent. They win debates. I'm amazed at the debates they win. It's like unreal, outstanding. It's just like so applaudable that they can win these debates. But then they're excuse my language. Then they're trash that want to go ahead and murder people with, or allow the murder of people with euphemisms and other things. But I'm glad you're smart enough to win a debate, man. That's great. Will you go to war? Will you pick up a rifle? Will you grab an entrenching tool and dig yourself a fighting hole and jump in it and fight? Are your beliefs that strong that you'll actually fight life or death for those beliefs? Because if you're willing to start a war as a puppetition, then you should go fight in it. But again, I really believe they're puppets, or they're working for an elite class that we don't even know who they are. We don't even know who they are, and that's going to sound crazy. What they do is they'll put in a little bit of spiritual truth with all these different religious books, and they'll have them intricately intertwined with all the contradictions, all the murder and slavery, all the bloodletting, and all the state ownership. Take a sip of my coffee. They want to keep the masses ignorant. They want to keep the masses ignorant, not using their higher brain ever, because that's how they keep us divided and enslaved. A quote by Frederick Douglass: "Knowledge unfits a man to be a slave. Knowledge unfits a man to be a slave." It's February 20th. We're coming up on the month of March pretty quick. This year's going by very fast. I think March is going to be a tumultuous month for this country. Around March 19th, it's actually March 22nd is the official date, but around March 19th is considered the dark occult season of sacrifice for 40 days up until Beltane or Walpurgisnacht on May 1st, May Day. And that's when they have a lot of different rituals that have to do with, human sacrifice and public violent things that have occurred. If you look up all the shootings and things that have happened since 1998 to now, a lot of these things happened during that time frame, during that spring time frame. Springtime, the time of renewal, the time of life coming back. And it's during that time that they try to make death. Genesis 3:22. Genesis 3:22. And God said, "Now that man has become like one of us." Let me pause for a second. Us. God wasn't talking to himself. God wasn't saying, "Now that man has become like me." He said us. Now that man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, he must not be allowed to take fruit from the tree of life or the tree of knowledge. What type of being wouldn't want you to have knowledge? The kind that makes, the kind of knowledge that makes you unfit to be a slave. Where if we woke up to the truth of us, we wouldn't stand for what's going on in the world. We have to take off our blinders, all of us. I get very disheartened sometimes. I'm like, man, no one's listening. It's like, shit, no one's listening. And then I look at the people that came before me and how long they've been doing it. And it's like, okay, I can't stop. I know I'm not a perfect person, but I can't stop talking about this. What's going on now is there's a eugenicist population control agenda to pass on certain blood moving forward, which leads into a conspiracy theory, actual theory, that some of these extraterrestrials are time travelers. They're coming back to do something to eradicate a certain bloodline for some reason. Maybe it's a bloodline that's not affected by the needlecraft and that dark sorcery that we see going on. Maybe sometime in the future, we actually won. Maybe the good guys won. That's a hopeful thought. If these are time traveling humans from the far future, from the distant future that could time travel. They've already said time travel is possible. It's just a technology issue at this point. They've already proven through physics and quantum physics it could be done. I'm not going to pretend to understand it. I'm not going to break it down 100%. I can't even break it down 20%. But I look at all these things and I know the nature of things I once considered supernatural that I now consider to be simply natural. And I'm not surprised by a whole lot of things anymore. So what if these extraterrestrials are coming back because they want to see certain bloodlines eliminated because those bloodlines aren't affected by the needlecraft? And some point in the future, the good guys win, and they want that these bloodlines to either, for whatever reason, to be taken out of existence to prevent something from happening. Or are they the good guys that are coming back to the future to prevent something bad from happening, good or bad? Either way, something happened in the future, if that's the case, that they don't want happening. And it would make sense to me why you have eugenicists trying to decide which blood moves forward and which blood doesn't, as far as gene qualities are concerned. This is why throughout human history we've had mass blood sacrifices. Think of the Mayans. Again, what is feeding off this energy? What type of prison planet are we living on? Is this truly a soul garden prison planet where we have dark entities that feed off of negative loose energy of fear and shame and frivolous anger, not righteous anger, with patience, and righteous anger with compassion? That's the good kind of anger. Not that frivolous, anger that you get and you've been warned about with the 7 deadly sins. And I'll briefly even cover that, because the 7 deadly sins are very important things that are written into the Bible. But they're not deadly sins. There is no such thing as an actual sin. Sin is actually from the original Greek sign. It's spelled S-Y-N. It's from the Greek word sign, which had to do with missing the mark, miss the mark. It had to do with archery. You missed the mark. There is no sin. So the 7 deadly sins, at the very best, are warnings against excess, but at the very worst, they're used by religion and state, intertwined together, to control humanity. If we're being controlled by an extraterrestrial force that wants to decide which bloodlines go on and survive and which ones don't. So if you take pride they're calling pride a deadly sin. Well, all the deadly sins have a light side and a dark side. So there's contradictions right there. So like the light side, the better side of pride, things that pride's good for is better quality work. Become a better speaker, become a better writer. You're going to take pride in yourself and in your work in order to improve it. Be proud of somebody that you're friends with. Be proud of your child for doing good in school. Be proud of someone's accomplishment. That's pride. That's the good part of it. The dark side of it is cockiness. And that's why they have that saying, pride before the fall. We don't want to be cocky, because that puts out an energy out there that's just it's a negative loose energy. So you don't want to be cocky. But how would a population control fit into pride? Well, pride in yourself can lead to you rejecting rulership. So they've got to make sure that that's one of the 7 deadly sins. And you got greed. Now, what's the light side of greed? Well, maybe you're saving some money. Maybe you've got a savings account. Maybe you're putting away a nest egg for the future. Are you being greedy? Not necessarily. But the dark side of greed is indeed selfishness, where you don't want to share. How would that help a population control agenda? You don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. No. You give your stuff to us. Give us your stuff. Yeah, we know you grew that food. You give it to us. Don't be selfish. You're being greedy. Give us your stuff. Come make offerings to us, food offerings. Look at some of the Egyptian Egyptian art on the wall. Read Slave Species of the Gods. Look at some of these authors, and they'll tell you that these food offerings and different offerings were made to giants that ruled us, called the Anunnaki. How about wrath? Well, the light side of wrath would be righteous anger, anger at injustice, anger at genocide, anger at murder. You know, what's the dark side of wrath? Resentment. And it will consume you. You know, those that want to rule us, don't be wrathful. Don't be wrathful to your masters. Don't be mad at us. Because wrath could, in that case, that righteous anger could lead to having enough pride to reject rulers. Okay, envy, the light side of envy. You want to better yourself. I envied Bruce Lee. It made me become a better martial artist. I envied Muhammad Ali's jab. It made me throw jab better. Not to those guys' level. No. But it made me better. So in that manner, envy was good. How is envy bad? Envy's bad because it could make you jealous. Okay? And jealous people are often lazy. They don't want to do it themselves. You know, so envy. How would envy, as a deadly sin, benefit someone trying to rule you? Well, don't covet what is your master's to have. You know, then we get to lust. This is where the biggest amount of contradictions and shame are intertwined, and loose energy. If you totally give over to the lust and you just totally, and I've done it before. Everyone's at one point or another done this, but if you totally give into it and there's no love involved, and it's not something you want to do. It becomes the inversion of love. You don't want to do it all the time. You want to have some type of balance. But lust, the light side of lust is, love, procreation. We need to procreate, right? The dark side would be obsession. Masters, don't obsess over what your masters have. We want to control what the population is, so your lust is bad. The next deadly sin would be gluttony. What is the light side of gluttony? This was hard for me to come up with what would be the light side of that, because too much consumption of anything is definitely bad for you. I mean, I start thinking about gluttony. But what about a cheat day? Yeah, today I'm going to have some pancakes and maybe a piece of cake tonight. I don't normally eat like that. I normally eat fish and I normally eat vegetables, but I'm going to cheat today. And you know what? It's a special occasion. I'm going to have maybe 3 or 4 beers. And I'm one of those guys, if I get a little buzz, I'm not some mean drunk or something like that. That's the light side. You're not really doing anything. You're not overdoing it. The unhealthy part of it would be overconsumption and doing it too much, eating too much, drinking too much, and doing it too often. It's not good for you. We know this. But remember, as far as your masters are concerned, anything you're consuming, that's your master's harvest. It's not yours. So this is the type of stuff they do. Then finally we get the sloth. Number 7, sloth. On the 7th day, God rested. God, quote unquote, himself rested. You're not allowed to have a rest day? The light side of sloth would be, I'm going to have a slothful day today on purpose. Consciously, I'm just going to rest. I'm not doing nothing productive. I'm taking a break. Especially in the stress of today's day and age. I'm shutting my mind off for a day. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the light side of it. The dark side of it is laziness, which ties into the dark side of envy, which is jealousy. So you could see how all this comes together. How would a master not want you being slothful? Get back to work, slave. How do they keep the population of this country so media entranced and ego entrenched that they don't do the simple research that's actually on Google? Government-controlled internet has a lot of the truth on it. You can Google a lot of stuff and find out. People don't have the time. They're in this cycle of work, eat, sleep, repeat. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Like drones. So we get stuck up in that cycle and we get too caught up in this stuff. And then You don't have the time. You have the time, but you just won't take the time to research what's out there. And believe me, folks, they're putting it out there on purpose because they have to give us this knowledge. That way, our inaction is their consent. So that's the seven deadly sins, and that's the pluses and minuses of the seven deadly sins. But now let's go to the true seven deadly sins, which are the seven transgressions against natural law, God's natural law that intertwine this law into the universe, just like gravity. You can't see it, but it happens. Just like Wi-Fi, you can't see it, but it comes into your house and it works. Just like you're hearing my voice over a radio that's connected to a cord, that's going to a computer, that's going to Wi-Fi, and these electric signals are going. You can't see it, but it works. It's the same thing with natural law. Okay? Don't murder, don't assault, don't rape, don't theft, don't trespass, don't coerce, and don't deceive. Because you can not lie. You can never tell a lie in your life. You can be the most honest, non-lying person and still be deceitful. This is what politicians do with their political speak. So you can't nail them down to anything. They're deceptive. Okay, deceptive sales practices in the small print. It's deceptive. It is a transgression of natural law to me. I had to go get 30 some odd dollars back, and I got it back. If you don't stand up for yourself, you won't get it back. They don't care. But murder, it's stealing life. Assault is stealing of physical well-being. Rape is stealing consent. Theft is stealing an object that's not yours. Trespass is stealing someone's emotional well-being to feel safe in their space. You know, to coerce somebody like they did with all the jabs, with all the shots, people got coerced into it, and it's stealing a person's free will. And if you deceive, you're stealing the ability for someone to make an informed decision. All the seven deadly sins boil down to either two things or one thing. The one thing they boil down to is don't steal. So if you don't initiate harm to other beings and you don't steal, you're following, you are actually adhering to the 10 Commandments. Can you think of any government in human history that's ever done that? Can we look at what's happening in today's day and age and say that's not being done? We have to understand what the natural laws of the universe are, what God with a capital G's natural laws are. And once we get this, we'll stand up, we'll say no, we'll get the order followers to stand down and say no, and humanity can finally unite and assemble. Until next week, folks. Stay safe.